Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here, a new album spotlight, as I like to call them, where I put the spotlight on a new album in progressive rock that I've really been loving, that I want to bring your attention towards, that I think is worthy of its own spotlighted review. I've kind of been changing the way I do this on the channel, just tweaking slightly. I used to do a lot more individual reviews, but now I'm really saving individual reviews for very special releases that I think are the cream of the crop, the best of the best, and all the other releases I'm going to be doing in monthly roundups. So if you want to check out my thoughts on more albums than the ones I tend to spotlight, check out those roundup shows. I did one basically for the month of July and then for the month of August. But I want to give special attention to the albums that really blow me away, that are special in some way. And I want to frame it more as a wider discussion topic. So it's not just solely focused on the album and describing the album, but also just a greater topic in the world of progressive rock that I think this album kind of personifies and is a great example of, just to give kind of more interest in these topics. And, sometimes I fear that a lot of people don't like to click on the individual reviews because I'm covering albums that they may have never heard of, and it's daunting to watch a 15-minute episode about something you've never heard about before. But hopefully this can draw more people in and be more interesting and a better way to frame these album spotlights that I'm doing. So today I'm talking about a really incredible album that's come out recently. This is Ihlo's album Legacy, which I actually have on CD here beside me. This is a fantastic release. I'm really happy to have it on CD here. It's released through Kscope. This is the band's second album. Their previous album was called Union in 2019, so 6 years later, they've released their newest album and have really risen a step up compared to their previous record. I just am blown away by how well this album has been crafted, and the discussion topic at large here is just, is this a perfect progressive metal album? It's just so well conceived. It's just so well produced. Every track is really essential and great listening. There's so many cool things in this mixture that I think this raises the band to new heights and puts them on the level of the best progressive metal bands on the scene right now. And I know that's probably sounds a bit hyperbolic, but I really believe that. And I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, is what are the best prog metal bands that are currently active? What are the big bands that have an impact in the scene? Maybe not necessarily your personal favorites, but just are the biggest names that we've got in our current modern day. Of course, Dream Theater kind of had that crown for quite some time through the early 90s and through the early 2000s as well. But I feel like there's a new crop of bands that have really taken the mantle and have pushed progressive metal forward in really exciting ways. I know I've heard in the past that there's kind of a big four of progressive metal that a lot of people consider kind of the premium of the new crop. One is Haken, which I talk about extensively on the channel, one of my all-time favorite bands. Another one is Between the Buried and Me, which is coming out with a new album soon. Of course, they lean more in the harsh vocal kind of side of the equation, which isn't quite to my taste, but I respect what they're doing, and they do have a lot of innovation and a lot of interesting conceptual records that I think make them contenders for one of the best prog metal bands that we have currently. Of course, you've also got Caligula's Horse, which released a great album last year, Charcoal Grace, and I think they've been making a name for themselves as one of the premier progressive metal acts. They're more on the cleaner vocal side, so that kind of works well for me, and I really love their latest album and have really been a fan of their catalog and career thus far, so I think they deserve a great spot in this mix. The other one that I've heard of is that kind of rises to this league is Periphery, which again uses more of those harsh vocals, but are very technical and have some really great playing and really great albums up to this point. Not probably the one I'm least familiar with out of this group, but it's one I've heard before. There's also other contenders, maybe a band like Tesseract as well, and you could count Opeth perhaps in this kind of conversation, but they're probably more in the older camp and dealt a little bit more with kind of the death prog death metal scene, and then transitioning more to like standard prog rock. So there's a little bit of gray area there. But those are kind of the names that circulate in my head, at least just thinking about it, about kind of the modern era of progressive metal bands. And I think Ihlo, with this new album, is joining this list of bands as one of the premier bands in the scene. I think there's other bands that have recently come out with releases that, could work their way up to this sort of a distinction. The main one that comes to mind is No Spoon, which had an incredible debut record not too long ago as well, and I could see them making a name for themselves depending on how their next release pans out. So I'm really interested in the world of progressive metal because I always talk about how I'm more of a progressive rock fan first. And I'm not really a metal fan, honestly. But I do like progressive metal because it's kind of a fusion of these different worlds. And what I love most of all is adventurous music that takes two different elements and kind of fuses them together in a new and an exciting way. But when I listen to prog metal, I'm somewhat looking for bands that are progressive first, maybe metal second, which isn't quite the equation that everyone else is looking for. But I think Ihlo really sits in that pocket really well, where they have really great progressive tendencies, but they're also able to fuse it with some metal background, which I think makes for this really great stew of musicality. And what I really love in this record is the production values are so high, just so much ear candy throughout the record. And they've really added a great element with all the synth work that you hear on this record. There's almost a 80s synth kind of feel to the background of the music, and it really adds another great element. That's something I've learned for myself, that when I'm looking for great prog rock or prog metal, I usually want something more than just your typical bass drums, guitar configuration, and keyboards add a lot of texture and a lot of interesting variation and give you a lot more things you can do within the sound palette beyond just the same old trio of instrumentation. And there's some bands who are able to bring in other instrumentation that kind of supplement, like violin or horns or other sort of elements like that have a similar effect. And I've noticed that with my favorite bands, they tend to have these sorts of elements. They have more than just your standard like guitar, bass, drums configuration. And so the synth work throughout this record is just fantastic. And there's 10 tracks here, and each one stands out and is fantastic in its own right. And it's almost like it starts off with a bang and really strong right off the bat, but somehow it also builds and builds as the record continues, and each song gets better and better as it continues down the line. To me, the most standout tracks come towards the second half of the record, honestly, even though the first 5 tracks are really excellent and bring you into this world expertly well. And there's some definite highlights throughout all of those tracks. I love the opening of Wraith and how it just brings you straight into the music. Gives you some burbling synths, some heavy power, some awesome riffs, some dramatic orchestration, which is pretty much what you can expect throughout the entire record. I love Empire, which was their early single, very catchy with brighter sounding guitars and, get those stop and start kind of djenty sort of riffs. Great, super catchy vocals and great keyboard magic sprinkled throughout the track. Really solid prog metal with some killer soaring guitar soloing toward the end as well. But to me, the real spotlight comes with Mute. This is one of my favorite tracks of the year. Has this atmospheric opening with beautiful guitar lines and Andy's vocals just at their most delicate and fragile, and just the chorus is dripping in this sumptuous beauty and these atmospheric synths adding to these gorgeous vocal tones. And it builds as well. It's just so beautiful. There's a section of like more ambient electronica with distant percussion and glitchy synths before the crushing heavy power comes and kicks in like a bomb, just exploding and washing over you. Powerful and impactful and just breathtaking, honestly. That's one of my clear highlights of the record. And if you want to check out a track from the record to see if it's for you, I think this is a solid contender. I just absolutely adore it. And it continues from there to impress with Cenotaph, which is just a great, solid 8-minute prog metal track. Almost a bit of a Haken feel to it at some points, with some clever prog metal heaviness and stop and start djent sections. A bit theatrical at points. really utilizing those 80s style synths to some great effect with some pounding drum work. And I just love how the track just morphs and weaves throughout its runtime, culminating in some uber powerful vocals and epic instrumentation. Just a killer track on this album that I absolutely adore and think is top tier stuff. Legacy, the title track, is another work of art. Starts a bit softer with some great drums and vocals and synths, but just excellent production values, great bass grooves and synth work. It doesn't hit you over the head with those heavy riffs, so it adds kind of a different dimension than what you've heard on other tracks thus far. There's some beautiful acoustic guitar on this with beautiful vocals, and it lulls you into kind of this sense of security. And then you hear a scream in the background, and one of the most glorious moments of the record hits. This kaleidoscope of beautiful synth power washes over you to just really impress and bring a new height to the record. I just absolutely love this moment where those synths just burst in, and it's just this beautiful epic piece of music. Monster build up in the second half of the record that really cements themselves as true players in this prog metal space. I just absolutely love this. And Signals ends the record in fantastic fashion as well. Beautiful guitar lines, gorgeous vocals, a bit of a lighter note at the start with plenty of ear candy in the vocal harmonies and synth work, great soundscape and production, a sumptuous bluesy guitar solo. A great musical break leads to more impressive musical build-ups, and one of the most glorious, triumphant melodies that I've heard this year comes out of this fray, played beautifully, and the whole rest of the track just builds upon it and creates for this really thrilling conclusion on the record. Perfectly captures everything that they're about and ends things on the highest of high notes. So if you couldn't tell already, I'm really impressed with this record, and I think it's practically perfect, and I think it really cements the band as one of the greatest bands in the progressive metal scene today. And the lineup for this album, it's really a trio of players here. You've got Andy Robison on vocals and synths, Phil Monroe on electric guitars, bass, synths, and orchestration, and Clark McMenemy on drums, which is fantastic. All three of them just do fantastic work throughout the record. I love Andy's vocals. They're just so pristine and beautiful and just so on point. Like I mentioned, I love all that synth work. I think it really elevates the album to epic heights. There's, of course, excellent guitar moments and great riffs, just excellent bass grooves. It just has everything I'm looking for in a prog metal work, and really is nearly a masterpiece of progressive metal in my estimation. This is kind of the high watermark of progressive metal for me moving forward. And I just am uber impressed, and I hope their next record doesn't take them, 6 years to come up with. I hope we get it around the corner so they can continue building upon this awesome record that they've produced and build upon this legacy that they've formed here. So that's what I have for you guys today. I think it's an excellent record. I think it's a no-brainer to check out. If you have any inclination towards prog metal, this is for you. There's no harshness. There's no Cookie Monster vocals. There's no heavy blast beats, really. It's just excellently done, top-tier progressive metal, right in the lane of what I enjoy and love about the genre. So check it out. A must-listen, and comes with the highest recommendation I could possibly give. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you appreciated this review. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this record if you've heard it, and hopefully you guys have been enjoying it to the same level I have. So thank you guys, and I'll catch you in a future episode. Bye everybody. Enjoy the music.